The air in Los Angeles this late March of 2026 is heavy, with the kind of toxic, suffocating smog that usually precedes a catastrophic Hollywood downfall. We are standing at the absolute precipice of a monumental collapse, watching the final, agonizing death throes of a billion-dollar brand that was built on a fragile foundation of professional victimhood, relentless public grievances, and an astonishing lack of self-awareness. You are engaging with this narrative right now because something thoroughly unprecedented has just occurred in the entertainment industry, an event so humiliating and so ruthlessly public that it has sent devastating shockwaves through the manicured estates of Montecito and reverberated all the way to the ancient stone corridors of Buckingham Palace. For years, the global public was force-fed a highly curated, heavily filtered fairy tale. We were explicitly told that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had bravely escaped the oppressive, archaic confines of the British monarchy to forge a glorious, independent, and wildly lucrative path in America. But the reality that has violently crashed down upon them this week proves that the grand Hollywood reinvention was nothing more than a spectacular, unsustainable illusion. The definitive proof of this collapse arrived not in a fleeting tabloid rumor, but on the glossy, unforgiving digital pages of Variety magazine, the absolute undisputed Bible of the entertainment industry. The headline read as a corporate obituary, detailing the total, unmitigated falling out between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the streaming behemoth Netflix. The article did not mince words. It did not offer polite public relations spin or the usual industry pleasantries. It delivered the kind of brutal, career-ending truth that only surfaces when powerful executives have collectively decided that a celebrity is no longer worth the financial or emotional headache. According to this devastating piece of journalism published just days ago in mid-March, the mood inside the glass-walled Netflix headquarters in Los Gatos is definitively and permanently over. The streaming giant has been pushed to the absolute brink of corporate exhaustion by what insiders legally and carefully term a perceived pattern of selling repackaged, endlessly recycled versions of the exact same story about their dramatic exit from royal life. Netflix paid an estimated $100 million for a global production powerhouse that would generate original, compelling content, and what they received instead was a broken record of familial complaints and settling of petty scores. But the true horror of the Variety expose lies in the granular, deeply embarrassing details of the couple's day-to-day professional conduct. The report exposes a staggering level of amateurism that has fundamentally alienated the most powerful power brokers in Hollywood. It details how the couple's bedside manner severely ruffled feathers in high-stakes creative meetings. It paints a deeply unflattering, highly specific portrait of Meghan Markle's behavior during virtual production calls. According to multiple highly placed sources within the streaming giant, whenever a Netflix executive offered a constructive critique that met with her displeasure, or whenever a conversation dared to challenge her creative genius, she would not engage in a professional, collaborative dialogue. Instead, she would simply stand up, walk away from the camera, and refuse to return to the Zoom meeting for lengthy, agonizing bouts of time. This is a level of petulant diva behavior that is a luxury reserved exclusively for proven, bankable, billion-dollar hitmakers. It is absolutely not tolerated from individuals whose primary contribution to the platform has been a reality television series about their own privileged lives and a string of quietly canceled animated projects. The hubris detailed in the report borders on the pathological. The most jaw-dropping revelation is that Meghan and Harry had developed a habitual pattern of completely bypassing the dedicated, highly experienced point people assigned to manage their projects, choosing instead to text the co-CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, directly with their minor grievances and daily production demands. The sheer arrogance of treating one of the most powerful men in global media like a personal assistant is staggering. It is the corporate equivalent of walking into a massive international bank to complain about a $20 overdraft fee and demanding to speak directly to the global chairman. It reeks of a desperate need to assert unearned status, a suffocating entitlement that screams a demand for royal deference in a fiercely meritocratic industry. And the industry has responded with a resounding collective sigh of utter exhaustion. Rumors are now swirling at lightning speed that Ted Sarandos has finally reached his absolute limit, allegedly stating that he will no longer sit for a phone call with Meghan Markle unless a corporate lawyer is actively listening on the line. While Netflix publicists have predictably rushed to issue standard watery denials, veteran industry watchers know exactly how to read between the lines. When a trade publication like Variety front-loads an article with such specific, humiliating details, the subsequent corporate obfuscations are meaningless. The message has been sent to the entire town. The Sussexes are officially a toxic asset. To fully grasp how Hollywood ruthlessly purges difficult, uncooperative talent, one only needs to look at the terrifying silence currently echoing through the highest echelons of Meghan Markle's representation. Just hours after the Netflix revelations hit the newsstands, the notoriously ruthless power brokers at William Morris Endeavor reportedly initiated a series of severe crisis meetings. Talent agencies are built entirely on a foundation of leverage, relationships, and the perception of unstoppable momentum. When a client transitions from a highly coveted, mysterious royal asset into a radioactive, unmanageable public relations nightmare who actively alienates powerful streaming executives, the agency arithmetic changes instantly. Insiders whisper that the prestigious agency, which took Meghan on with the grand promise of reinventing her as a global lifestyle and production mogul, has quietly stopped returning calls from her Montecito team. The high-profile strategy sessions have evaporated. The pitches for luxury brand ambassadorships and elite speaking engagements have ground to a humiliating halt. In a town where your worth is entirely dictated by who is willing to be seen having lunch with you at the Polo Lounge, the Duchess of Sussex has suddenly found herself sitting completely alone, staring at a calendar utterly devoid of A-list invitations. The entertainment industry is a transactional machine. It will tolerate astronomical levels of bad behavior, but only if that behavior translates directly into massive, undeniable profits. The moment your controversy stops generating revenue and starts generating purely negative, exhausting distractions, you become utterly radioactive. This abrupt industry excommunication is triggering an absolute cold sweat panic regarding the Sussexes' terrifying financial burn rate. Living the life of a globally recognized billionaire-adjacent royal in Southern California requires an astronomical, almost incomprehensible influx of liquid cash. We are looking at a $14 million sprawling estate with staggering annual property taxes, a small army of domestic staff, aggressive public relations teams on permanent retainer, and most crippling of all, a private, heavily armed security detail that costs millions of dollars every single year. Harry and Meghan allegedly built this unsustainable infrastructure on the absolute certainty that the $100 million Netflix deal and the $20 million Spotify contract would provide a permanent, endlessly overflowing river of capital. But with Spotify having publicly labeled them grifters and severed ties long ago, and Netflix now allegedly moving to enforce brutal performance clawback clauses due to undelivered content, the financial walls are violently closing in. They are suddenly staring down the barrel of a multi-million-dollar lifestyle with virtually zero reliable, incoming revenue streams to sustain it. The most humiliating detail leaking out of the Netflix headquarters is that massive promotional posters of the couple have been quietly stripped from the reception lobbies, and that boxes of Meghan's unsold, highly publicized American Riviera Orchard artisanal jams are currently sitting in the employee break rooms, being given away as pathetic, unmovable freebies to underpaid interns. The grand, aspirational lifestyle brand has been reduced to corporate clutter. The realization of this impending financial catastrophe has reportedly shattered whatever fragile unity remained inside the Montecito mansion, sparking a vicious, unprecedented cycle of blame. Sources deeply embedded within their shrinking inner circle describe a household paralyzed by mutual recrimination. Prince Harry, who gave up the absolute, lifelong financial security of the Duchy of Cornwall, is said to be completely overwhelmed by the crushing pressure of Hollywood capitalism, a brutal, transactional world he was never trained to navigate. He reportedly blames Meghan's aggressive, combative management style and her endless obsession with settling petty media scores for alienating the corporate partners who held their financial survival in their hands. Meghan, conversely, allegedly views Harry's brooding presence, his ongoing, deeply unpopular legal crusades in London, and his inability to seamlessly transition into a charismatic Hollywood producer as a massive anchor dragging down her brand potential. The fairy tale narrative of two star-crossed lovers taking on the world has completely dissolved into the grim, terrifying reality of two incredibly privileged individuals realizing they have spectacularly mismanaged their golden ticket and are now trapped in a rapidly sinking ship of their own making. As the Hollywood infrastructure collapses around them, the Sussexes are reportedly retreating into a state of deep, litigious paranoia. Sources indicate that the couple is quietly exploring aggressive legal action against Netflix itself, operating under the delusional belief that the streaming giant has somehow breached their confidentiality agreements by leaking these embarrassing, highly damaging stories to the press. The sheer, breathtaking irony of this situation is almost too much to bear. The very couple who built a massive, lucrative global industry out of spilling their own family's deepest, most intimate secrets to Oprah Winfrey, to Spotify, to Netflix, and to random publishing houses, is now allegedly threatening to sue a media conglomerate for leaking stories about their bad manners in a Zoom meeting. They are convinced that a shadowy network of saboteurs within the Netflix ecosystem is actively working to destroy them. But this paranoia blinds them to the simplest, most obvious truth. No one needs to sabotage them because they are doing a spectacular job of it all by themselves. If they do foolishly decide to launch a legal strike against Netflix, they will find themselves engaged in a suicidal corporate war against a behemoth that employs an army of the most ruthless entertainment lawyers on the planet. It would be the final, fatal mistake of a career defined by massive miscalculations. But the deepest, most agonizing psychological blow to Harry and Meghan is not coming from the legal department of Netflix. It is coming from the content acquisition team. The absolute ultimate betrayal, the rumor that is currently causing the walls of the Montecito mansion to shake with fury, is that Netflix has opened up quiet, highly sensitive, back-channel lines of communication with the very people Harry and Meghan despise the most, Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. While the Sussex deal is dying a loud, embarrassing death, Netflix is aggressively, carefully courting the working royals for a total, global reset. The streaming executives have looked at the numbers, they have read the room, and they have realized that they bought the wrong royals. They want to erase the chaos, the constant whining, and the endless victimhood of the Sussexes, and replace it with the undeniable, pristine, global credibility of the future king and queen of the United Kingdom. The contrast between the two couples has never been more stark or more monetizable. On one side, you have Harry and Meghan, drowning in legal bills, producing failed animated series, and demanding taxpayer-funded security for private commercial trips. On the other side, you have William driving the globally respected, highly impactful Earthshot Prize, and Catherine spearheading her universally praised, scientifically backed campaigns for early childhood development. Netflix does not want to build a new, risky brand with complaining ex-royals. They want to plug their massive global distribution network directly into a royal brand that already works flawlessly. They are reportedly pitching a sweeping, multi-part educational documentary series tentatively titled Legacy of Learning, which would focus on British heritage, environmental stewardship, and mental health. It is exactly the kind of high-prestige, substantive, culturally significant content that Meghan and Harry promised to deliver, but fundamentally lack the work ethic and the institutional access to produce. Can you possibly imagine the absolute blinding rage currently consuming Meghan Markle as she realizes that her sister-in-law, the woman she mocked on global television for being too formal and too cold, is now being actively courted by the very streaming giant that is currently trying to claw back $20 million from the Sussex accounts? It is a total, undeniable usurpation. It proves that the entertainment industry does not value the title of Duchess when it is detached from the duty of the crown. Netflix has realized that a royal title is completely meaningless if the person holding it behaves like a D-list reality star. The potential partnership between Netflix and the Waleses would serve as the ultimate, humiliating validation of the royal family's strategy of dignified silence. It would loudly declare to the world that true influence is not born of grievance, but of consistent, quiet, impactful service. This terrifying realization that the Hollywood dream is completely dead has triggered a profound, desperate shift in Meghan Markle's long-term strategy. If the commercial world is rejecting her, she must desperately cling to the one asset that still separates her from the millions of other aspiring influencers in Southern California. She must hold onto the royal title with a grip of absolute iron. As the pressure cooker of financial ruin, professional failure, and global mockery intensifies, the marriage between Harry and Meghan is reportedly fracturing beyond the point of repair. The separate bedrooms, the completely distinct public relations teams, the solo trips to foreign countries, and the glaring absence of the engagement ring have all painted a bleak, undeniable picture of a couple living entirely separate lives under the same massive, heavily mortgaged roof. But as the divorce rumors upgrade from tabloid whispers to serious, high-level legal preparations, the true nature of Meghan's endgame is being exposed. According to explosive reports leaking from the highest echelons of Los Angeles family law circles, Meghan Markle has drawn a line in the sand regarding a potential separation. The battle will not be over the division of the furniture, the custody of the rescue dogs, or even the primary split of their rapidly dwindling financial asset. The war will be fought entirely over the retention of her title. She has allegedly issued a non-negotiable, absolute directive to her legal team stating that she is the Duchess of Sussex, and she will remain the Duchess of Sussex until the day she dies. For Meghan, the title is not a romantic keepsake of a failed marriage to a British prince. It is a highly valuable, legally protected trademark. It is the absolute foundation of her intellectual property. She knows that without those magic words preceding her name, she is nothing but a former actress with a terrible reputation. With the title, she retains the faint, lingering illusion of global importance. Her legal team is reportedly combing through the historical precedents of royal divorces, desperately trying to construct an airtight strategy that guarantees she keeps the prize. They are looking closely at the arrangements made for Princess Diana and Sarah Ferguson in the 1990s. When Diana and Charles divorced, she was brutally stripped of the Her Royal Highness styling, a deeply humiliating move that meant she technically had to curtsy to her own children. However, she was permitted to retain the title Diana, Princess of Wales. Similarly, Sarah Ferguson became Sarah, Duchess of York. Meghan is entirely pragmatic. She knows the HRH style is meaningless in the United States, and she is perfectly willing to sacrifice it on the altar of negotiation. But she demands to be styled as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, in perpetuity. She will argue, with cold, biological calculation, that as the mother of Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, the king's own grandchildren, she cannot be stripped of her rank without the palace appearing unimaginably cruel, vindictive, and discriminatory. She views her children as the ultimate insurance policy, human shields deployed to protect her corporate branding. But Prince William, deeply embedded in the strategic planning of the monarchy's future, is preparing a scorched earth countermaneuver that could obliterate her plans entirely. William is absolutely furious at the concept of Meghan engaging in what palace insiders are calling a commercial divorce. He finds the idea of her retaining the prestige and the marketability of a royal dukedom while entirely abandoning the grueling duties, the husband, and the country that provided it to be intensely repulsive and institutionally dangerous. He is looking closely at the ruthless, highly effective model deployed by Queen Margrethe of Denmark, who shocked the European establishment by unilaterally stripping 4 of her own grandchildren of their royal titles overnight to aggressively slim down the monarchy and protect its core integrity. William is arguing behind the closed doors of the Privy Council that royal titles are not personal property to be divided up in a California divorce settlement. They are sacred gifts from the sovereign, inextricably tied to a lifetime of service and duty. If you do not serve the crown and you are no longer married to a serving member of the family, you revert to being a private citizen. Full stop. William is reportedly pushing King Charles to invoke the ultimate nuclear option, utilizing the ancient, incredibly powerful 1917 Titles Deprivation Act, or pushing a new act of parliament, to completely and totally sever the dukedom of Sussex from both Harry and Meghan. He wants to strip the title away entirely, reducing her legally, socially, and commercially to Miss Meghan Markle. He understands that this is the absolute only way to permanently stop the endless, humiliating monetization of the Windsor name. He wants to ensure that there are no more Duchess-branded jars of strawberry jam, no more Duchess-produced reality shows, and no more trading on the family's heritage to secure venture capital funding. However, the arcane, incredibly complex nature of British peerage law presents a terrifying, almost comical loophole that Meghan's team is undoubtedly aware of. If King Charles and Parliament successfully strip the specific peerage of the Dukedom of Sussex, Meghan does not automatically revert to being a commoner. Under the ancient patriarchal rules of the British aristocracy, as long as she remains the divorced ex-wife of a blood prince, she legally assumes his rank and his first name. If she loses the Duchess title, she automatically, legally becomes Princess Henry of Wales. This is the exact same archaic rule that makes the wife of Prince Michael of Kent styled as Princess Michael. This obscure technicality is an absolute nightmare scenario for Buckingham Palace. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated chaos this would cause in the American media market. Meghan Markle, a woman whose ultimate towering ambition has always been to be recognized as the undisputed queen of American culture, would technically hold the legal title of princess. Does anyone on earth genuinely believe that she would market herself as Princess Henry? Of course not. She would instantly drop the Henry from all her branding, her letterheads, and her social media profiles. She would simply, aggressively go by Princess Meghan. To the vast majority of the American public who do not understand the intricate, granular nuances of British royal styling, Princess Meghan sounds infinitely more powerful, vastly more glamorous, and significantly more magical than Duchess Meghan. It would directly, intentionally align her with the enduring, saintly legacy of Princess Diana in the global imagination. It is a brilliant, terrifying trap. By attempting to punish her by stripping the dukedom, the palace might accidentally hand her an even more valuable, more iconic brand identity. Meghan is holding this bizarre constitutional quirk over the palace like a loaded weapon. It is a game of high-stakes, international chicken, and she is betting that the king's fear of a public relations disaster will force him to let her keep the Duchess title just to prevent the birth of Princess Meghan. This desperate financial and branding panic is precisely what is driving their latest, highly controversial moves on the global stage, moves that are triggering massive public backlashes and exposing their profound hypocrisy. In a frantic attempt to generate new content, secure private funding, and maintain the illusion of global relevance, Harry and Meghan are increasingly relying on what critics are calling faux royal tours. They travel to developing nations or Commonwealth countries, demanding the red carpet treatment, the military escorts, and the diplomatic deference usually reserved for actual working heads of state, but they do so entirely as private, commercial citizens looking to shoot footage for their next struggling media project. The hypocrisy of this model has finally reached a breaking point, and the revolt is currently exploding in Australia. The couple has been planning an upcoming visit to the country, attempting to frame it as a humanitarian endeavor. But the Australian public, and increasingly the Australian political establishment, has seen entirely through the charade. This is not an official royal tour conducted on behalf of the British government or King Charles. It is a private, highly lucrative business trip where Meghan is expected to engage in paid speaking engagements, secure brand partnerships, and film promotional material for her struggling ventures. Yet, the couple has the sheer, unmitigated audacity to expect the Australian taxpayer to foot the massive, multi-million-dollar bill for their extensive security apparatus, logistical coordination, and police escorts. The backlash has been swift, furious, and highly organized. A petition launched on change.org has gained massive, explosive momentum, gathering tens of thousands of signatures in a matter of days. The demand of the petition is simple, logical, and incredibly forceful. No taxpayer-funded official support for Harry's private commercial visit to Australia. The creators of the petition articulate the exact frustration that has been simmering across the Commonwealth for years. They state that since the couple voluntarily stepped down from official royal duties to pursue private, incredibly lucrative commercial activities in Hollywood, they must bear the absolute financial burden of those personal choices. You cannot resign from the job, relentlessly trash the company that employed you, and then demand to keep using the company credit card to pay for your bodyguards when you travel for personal profit. The situation has placed the Australian government in an agonizing, impossible bind. Political leaders recognize that there is massive, highly toxic political risk in using public funds to support a couple who are deeply unpopular and widely viewed as entitled grifters. The taxpayers are absolutely furious at the prospect of funding a millionaire's corporate gig disguised as a humanitarian mission. However, the police and security chiefs argue that because of the intense, global profile the couple relentlessly cultivates, their presence does create a legitimate security footprint that requires management. But the solution to this problem is stunningly simple, and it highlights the core delusion of the Sussex existence. If the threat level requires massive protection, then Harry and Meghan, who constantly boast to the media about their staggering wealth and massive production deals, should simply write a check and pay for the private security themselves, exactly as Taylor Swift, Elon Musk, or any other private, high-profile citizen would do. They demand to be treated as independent, private individuals when it comes to avoiding royal protocol, avoiding public accountability, and signing massive corporate contracts. But the very second the bill for their heavily armed bodyguards arrives, they instantly regress, throwing a tantrum and demanding to be treated as precious, vulnerable royalty who deserves state-funded protection. The global public is no longer willing to indulge, fund, or tolerate this breathtaking double standard. As the financial pressure mounts and the public rejection becomes undeniable, the internal dynamics of the Sussex household have reportedly grown incredibly dark, leading to the resurrection of the most explosive, devastating secret in their arsenal. With the marriage failing and the threat of a brutal custody battle looming over the future of Archie and Lilibet, the palace intelligence apparatus has uncovered evidence of a contingency plan so ruthless it borders on the unthinkable. This is the activation of what insiders are terrified is the reincarnation of Project Mirror. For months, as the relationship between Harry and Meghan deteriorated behind the high walls of Montecito, Meghan had been methodically planning for an exit strategy that would ensure she retained absolute control over her most valuable remaining assets, her children. She knew that a standard custody battle in the California courts would be messy, public, and potentially devastating, especially if Harry's legal team decided to aggressively weaponize the very real concerns about her mental stability, her relentless media manipulation, and the toxic, highly controlled environment she had created for the children. She needed a trump card, a way to bypass the jurisdiction of both the United States family courts and the overarching historical reach of the British Crown. The digital forensics team at Kensington Palace, utilizing resources from former intelligence officers, intercepted highly encrypted communications that revealed Meghan's horrifying, desperate masterstroke. She was actively, secretly negotiating a massive multi-year media development and residency contract with an entertainment subsidiary deeply tied to the sovereign wealth fund of Qatar. But this wasn't just a deal to produce podcasts or write books. The core of the contract involved the permanent relocation of Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet to the Middle East. The plan meticulously outlined the establishment of dual citizenship for the children through a process of honorary state sponsorship. This was a calculated, brilliant, and deeply malicious legal maneuver designed to place the royal children under an entirely different legal jurisdiction, effectively shielding them within a sovereign state where Western custody laws, international extradition treaties, and the reach of the British monarchy would be severely limited, if not completely neutralized. Meghan was allegedly planning to flee with the children to Doha, transforming them into the primary highly protected assets of a newly minted, Middle Eastern-backed media empire, far from the influence of Prince Harry and entirely beyond the control of King Charles. When Prince Harry accidentally discovered the burner phone containing the logistics of this flight risk hidden beneath the floorboards of Meghan's private yoga studio, the realization broke him completely. He saw, with horrifying, undeniable clarity, that the woman he had sacrificed his entire existence to protect was actively preparing to kidnap his children, erase their heritage, and move them to a country where his rights as a father would be rendered practically non-existent. It was the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal, the final proof that he had never been a partner, but merely a highly useful stepping stone. The discovery of this plot triggered a massive, immediate, and utterly ruthless response from London. Prince William, acting with the cold, absolute authority of the future sovereign, did not wait for the California courts to debate the merits of the case. He did not issue a public statement or engage in a war of words. He invoked a terrifying, dormant piece of royal legislation known as the Edwardian Protocol. This legal mechanism, originally drafted in the chaotic aftermath of the 1936 abdication crisis, grants the Crown the ultimate, overriding authority to assume structural guardianship over any royal minors who are deemed to be at severe risk of identity erasure, international displacement, or commercial exploitation that threatens the dignity of the throne. William convened a secret emergency session of the Privy Council and activated the protocol. In a coordinated multinational strike executed with breathtaking speed, the British government immediately suspended the international passports of Archie and Lilibet, freezing their travel rights and ensuring they could not legally cross any borders without the explicit dual authorization of the Crown. Financial regulators in the United Kingdom and allied nations froze the complex web of shell companies Meghan had established to fund the relocation. And in the final, most dramatic maneuver of the entire crisis, a private jet chartered by the Foreign Office landed in Southern California under the cover of darkness, carrying royal legal envoys and child welfare specialists tasked with officially bringing the children back under the protective, impenetrable umbrella of the British state. The era of the Sussexes, which began with a spectacular, televised wedding and dreams of modernizing an ancient institution, has ended in a crushing, humiliating display of absolute institutional power. Meghan Markle, stripped of her Hollywood alliances, her streaming contracts, her secret escape plans, and her absolute control over her children, sits completely isolated in a heavily mortgaged mansion, facing a future defined by litigation and irrelevance. Her grand, arrogant attempt to hack the code of high society to demand the deference of royalty while behaving with the ruthless, transactional ethics of a reality television star has failed spectacularly. Prince Harry, the man who burned his entire world to the ground in pursuit of a phantom freedom, is left standing alone in the ashes of his own catastrophic choices. He has lost his military honors, the respect of his nation, the love of his brother, and the trust of his father. He is a prince without a country, a husband without a partnership, and a father who had to rely on the very institution he despised to save his children from the woman he chose. As King Charles finalizes the paperwork that will permanently and legally sever the Sussex name from the working machinery of the monarchy, sealing the firewall that William and Princess Anne so brilliantly constructed, the message to history is clear and undeniable. The crown is not a toy to be played with, a brand to be monetized, or a family to be blackmailed. It is a fortress. And while you may freely choose to walk out of its gates, you will never, ever be allowed to tear down its walls. The noise from California has finally been silenced, replaced by the enduring, unbroken, and terrifyingly powerful quiet of a monarchy that has survived yet another rebellion, emerging colder, leaner, and stronger than ever before.